How do you do a drive-by? Wait. And we're back.
Welcome to the Yin to Yang podcast. Join us for candid conversations speaking about all things spirituality, consciousness, and ascension. Whether you are newly awakened or a seasoned journeyer, we trust that these conversations land in your heart and guide you deeper into the truth of who you are. So get comfortable and enjoy.
What are we doing again today?
I don't even remember. Today, physicality and spirituality.
Awesome. So I will leave the physicality side up to you. So what is your definition of physicality defined in spiritual terms?
To be spiritually fit means to be physically fit, because as much as it's nice to stay in one camp or the other, your body is how you experience this world. But the misconception is that your soul is inside your body, but your body is inside your soul. So spirituality, physicality, they need to be married at the highest order, because if you're there spiritually but physically it's failing, it's quite difficult to really spread your essence in the world.
Yep.
You know?
That is really important. We want to be a conscious essence rippling sprinkler.
Yes, because, you know, as much as we say don't judge, and I don't believe we walk around with the intention to judge, but there is a level of judgment that we have. Maybe you could say observation, actually. And so when you meet someone, there is an observance of their physicality in that moment. Even if it's not coming from a place of judgment or separation, there is an observance. And so as a man, we admire physical strength. It's what, you know, the number one thing we look in other men. Now, I'm not saying it is the most important thing, but we do look up to people who are physically strong. And when a man is physically strong, he has a kind of presence. Now, what he does with that is up to him, you know, either for good or for evil. So we are much more inclined to be attracted to and listen to someone with good physicality, you know, whether it's for whatever reason. It can be on the shallow end of, you know, just the way someone looks, or it can be on the higher end of like, this person looks like they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I believe that you don't tell people the way you are, you show them.
Yeah.
That's through your actions, your habits, your lifestyle. And your body is a physical representation of your actions, your habits, your lifestyle. So we can talk about spirituality, but you have to marry into that the physicality.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what good is all the stuff we're sharing? What good is knowledge if you can't implement it? And where does implementation happen? In the habits.
Absolutely. And I think to kind of come on the back end of that as well, I think it's important to understand that we are in an evolutionary ascension cycle, and the way in which we evolve in consciousness at this time is in the body. So we went through evolutionary cycles where it was very much spiritualization, and then we came down into materialization, which is where we are now, and we're trying to get back into spiritualization. But there was a time where we wanted to, kind of in the 60s, 70s, 50s even, people wanted to go up and out of their bodies. They were the process of integration and experiencing source was not in the body. It was not something that people had access to because of the level of the veil and people's just general awakening at that point in time. Fast forward to now, and we now recognize that we have enough capacity to hold light in the body that we can now have those connections without having to have things like psychedelic experiences or mediumships or psychic readings and stuff like that. It's all available to us now. But in order to really amplify your own connection as a channel to source, because essentially that is what the physical body is in spirituality, it's the conduits. It is that energetic highway that runs from your physical body into the cosmos and back again, and then into the earth and back again. So it is this cosmic highway that is constantly bringing in data and information, and your level to which you can hold more and more information and have more and more access and have more and more consciousness is really the level to which you are able to make space in your physical body to hold that. And when we talk about space in the physical body, that is from my perspective, in terms of spirituality, that is obviously things like shadow work. That is stored trauma, limiting belief systems, all of which creates pockets of dense consciousness in the body that doesn't allow for the space to open up to have more light coming in. So very often, like I will say to my clients, and I think I've said it to you as well, is, you know, if we imagine that our physical bodies are a mansion and we now have squatters living in our mansion, and it's up to us to evict those squatters in order to take back our real estate, which is ours, and then make it what we want it to be. But those real estate squatters, or those squatters in the body, are the trauma, the limiting beliefs, the shadow, and all of that. So we have to start getting them out. And what's really interesting is what I love about spirituality and physicality is that there is always this tie, because very, very often a lot of our limiting beliefs manifest in the physical body and vice versa. So, you know, even with regards to things like entities, which is another topic all on its own, if you have parasites in the physical body and you have a worm infestation in the body, you have 100% got entities in your energy field, because the physical body represents and reflects and mirrors your energy field. So I always find it interesting that, you know, it's that age-old saying of what's going on in your internal reality is going to create your external reality. And that really comes down to how healthy is your body. Because, yeah, I mean, we all know that the body speaks. And when we have, you know, illnesses, accidents, injuries, it's all, you know, the universe's way of communicating with us. And, you know, Julia Cannon goes into a lot of that about soul speak and body talk and all of those good things. And there's lots of modalities out there that tell you about that. But we very fundamentally don't look at it. We don't look at, why am I sick? Why am I getting these injuries? Why are these things happening to me? Why do I have birthmarks? You know, people find it incredibly fascinating that, you know, within QHHT, there is this understanding that birthmarks often represent a scar point of a past life trauma or death. So very often that's why you have them. Birthmarks are the same. So the physical body, if you are able to really get into tune with it, it tells you a lot about your spiritual self as well.
100%.
Yeah. So I think my question to you would be, when, as someone who's watching this and they are newly awakened and they know, okay, we've now said we need to marry spiritual, we need to marry physical. Without the one, you can't have the other. Without the other, you can't have the other. What would be your top recommendations to begin with, to start with, coming into the awakening journey, and people are now saying, okay, what are my 5 top tips for spirituality? What are my 5 top tips for physicality? What would be your fundamental thing to start implementing, and why?
Yeah, you know, good question. There's so many tangents I wanted to go down there when you were talking. But, you know, one way I look at it is the different bodies, right? So for simplicity, we'll talk about, let's say, the 5 bodies, because it ties into your question. There are lots of bodies, like the etheric, the astral. So you got the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the, let's say, the spiritual body. Between the mental and emotional is the breath body, because the breath affects the mind and affects the emotions. That's why, like, when you're thinking a lot, it changes how you breathe. When you get emotional, it changes how you breathe. So the best way to start to create that awareness and shift is in your breath. You know, we said last time, one of the definitions of spirituality is a person who breathes. So becoming aware of how you breathe and actually learning to train your breath will completely change the way you live your life, your physicality a lot. Because when I work with someone and I test their breathing, that's a huge indicator of their overall strength. How many times you breathe per second tells me a lot about your physical fitness and your emotional state and your stress state, basically where you are in yourself. So starting with the breath is number 1. And like we did last time with the meditation, just taking that moment to just take that breath, like really start to reconnect. So something as simple as box breathing is such a good way to start to train your breathing, your nervous system, your mind. And when you're really focused on the breath, you can't think about other things. So it becomes a meditation. That is the real meditation. Just starting there. And then, same like we said before, becoming curious about life, and therefore become curious about your body. How does your body work? You know, How many different ways can your body move? Can your shoulder move? Can your hands move? Can your feet move? And then just starting there, a lot of us become so trapped in certain patterns of movement. So you sit all day long. Well, that's a very specific pattern, and your body gets more conditioned to that pattern, and then it conditions your mind to certain ways of thinking. So when Bruce Lee used to talk about fighting and movement, he would say it's my expression. He's expressing himself through movement, like dance, like fighting. All these things are self-expression. So how can you express yourself better in your physicality? Connect with the breathing, connect with the body. Because when you connect with your breathing, you start to become aware of the body differently. Like, my hips are really tight. So maybe today's leg day, but actually I need to stretch this out. And then as you're stretching it out, you're like, well, actually this kind of movement feels really good. Then you start moving a little differently. And then the next thing, you're moving like this, you're moving like that. You've got all these different patterns that you're moving into. And so, like you said, the body manifests what's in the mind. So with the bodies, spirituality affects the mind, affects the breath body, affects the emotional body, affects the physical body, energy is going up and down, all these different channels. So when you liberate the patterns that you're stuck in the body, you liberate the mind, and then you can actually move through life differently, you can think differently, you can see different opportunities in the world, and you have access to more. So health, I think it's good to define it, to me, is your ability to experience life. And my definition of a healthy person isn't someone who's like a idealistic picture perfect of health. It's actually someone who's choosing to be healthy regardless of their circumstances. So whether you have cancer or a broken bone or just ill, whatever it is, you're choosing health in that time. Because I know a lot of people that when their health starts going down, they're like, oh, fuck it. And then they just eat whatever.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I had a bad day eating, so I might as well carry on.
Yeah.
So that's not a healthy person.
Yeah.
And that person could even look healthy. They could have muscles, they could be all those things, but they're not choosing their health in the moment with their circumstances. So,
I mean, that's a conversation all on its own, because why do we not choose health? I mean, if you look at the amount of propaganda, brainwashing that happens with regards to all of the various different diets and the push for, plant-based eating and all of those good things. And I'm not saying anything is right or wrong. But I think it's really interesting that we have been so conditioned from a very young age from our parents saying, well, that's what you're going to eat because it's healthy. And so as we get to adulthood, we've been programmed. It's another pattern. This is a way of being, it's behavior. And I think one of the greatest things that comes out of that is with the curiosity, you can start to question, why do I actually do that? Why do I participate in that thing? Why do I eat that thing? Why do I do that certain exercise? And we've had long conversations about that with regards to the dangers of like HIIT training if not done under someone who is actually knowing what they're doing. And the awareness into that is amazing, because everybody punts HIIT training and everybody's doing these workouts led by some person on YouTube, and they're actually injuring their bodies. But nobody talks about that, and it's really interesting how much of what we think is good for us, a lot of people are like, oh no, we're going to save the planet and we're going to drink, plant-based milk, and it's actually not good for them.
not good for the planet either.
So it's always the alternatives that people think are better without research that keep people trapped in the same pattern of, I think that's better for me, but it's actually not.
And by research, investigation into your body.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what is going to work for you, not just blindly following the narratives. And I think for me, like, I've come up against this a lot with fasting, is that people who have never fasted will say to me, that's dangerous, that's not good for you, you can't do that, and it's bad for your body. But they've never done it before. But they're the first people to give you the advice to say, you can't do it. And it's with everything. The moment that I went carnivore, it's like, oh my gosh, you're a spiritual person that eats meat. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I think at the end of the day, my encouragement would always be true to you. Come back into that space of intuition and discernment that navigates your field of wisdom and go, okay, what do I actually need to support my body at this time? What actually what turns me on for life in terms of the things that I want to be doing, rather than, okay, that's what I should be doing and that's what I should be doing. And we're not even here to tell you what you should be doing. These are just recommendations from what we, yeah, you might tell you what to do, what we have experienced to work with ourselves and with our clients and what we know to be true, because fundamentally it's simple. It's actually not complicated.
And I think what's so important is slowing down, because we become so autonomized that it's like, okay, and even if you're on a healthy kick, it's like, okay, this is my breakfast, this is my meal, you're not stopping to check, like, do I even really want to eat this?
Yeah.
Because even if you build a lot of awareness, like, you're like, well, I'm just so used to eating this food that this is my habit now, but it's like, actually, I really crave fruit, or I really don't want to eat meat, or I really do want to eat meat, like, and just slowing down. And the best way to slow down,
Just breathe.
just take that breath, like, keep, like, that's why when I'm teaching someone to breathe, I give them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Do it in the morning, do it in the afternoon, do it in the evening, to start to reconnect. And it's happened to me a lot. I used to have a whole practice in the morning, be so tapped in, and then you're checking these emails, and then you're replying to these people, and then you're doing these calls, and then this is this, and then you're back in it. I think Osho used to say, what's the point of meditating for 1 hour when you're not in a meditative state for 23 hours? And so how often can you just slow down, reconnect, breathe, and then make a decision? Because you think you're making decisions, but it's your unconscious running you. So what you were saying in the beginning, can't remember exactly, but what I remember thinking whilst you were saying it is, consciousness is light. So the unconscious is the absence of light. So you shine the light of consciousness onto the unconscious, you illuminate it, and you bring it to the forefront. So that's your shadow. Your shadow is your untapped potential. So that's why you have to do shadow work. You have to integrate to become more of yourself by shining the light of consciousness. And you can start doing that by slowing down, by being aware of how your body actually feels moment to moment. So many people, it's like the biggest, how can I say this? Like the one question that never truly goes answered is, how are you? Oh, I'm good, I'm fine. Oh, I'm tired. It's like, no, how are you really feeling? And you don't get an answer because they don't know.
Exactly.
So just checking in with the body throughout the day. How do you feel emotionally? How do you feel physically? How do you feel mentally? If you could ask yourself those 3 questions, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your day would change a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we speak about that a lot with regards to, cultivating ceremony in the mundane moments. And I love what you said there about, what's the point in meditating for an hour if 23 hours you're going to not be meditating? And I think that's exactly it. Like, one of my big spiritual tips, if you want to call it that, in, marrying the physical and the spiritual, is to start cultivating ceremony in the mundane moments. So where you feel like you are doing something unconsciously or mindlessly or out of autopilot, or something that you are just not even thinking about doing, like washing the dishes or hanging up the washing, or all of those things that are necessary and that we do on autopilot. It's about recognizing that in those moments we have an opportunity to bring consciousness into it. So can I hang up the washing whilst humming a beautiful song? Can I do the dishes whilst listening to an educational podcast that is sustenance to my soul? Can I have a shower whilst using essential oils? These are all really, really small things, actually, in the grand scheme of things, because it takes nothing for us to quickly put a podcast on or a song on or dance a little whilst we're cooking dinner. But we haven't even thought that was available to us, because we see it as a chore, we see it as mundane, we see it as that thing that we have to keep on doing. But the other thing that came up now, as you were speaking, is this misconception around what shadow work truly is.
That's what that
No, but you actually just made me realize something in what you were saying, because within the spiritual community, and maybe it is because it's just the spiritual side of things that people often talk about when it comes into shadow work, but it's, very often people will say shadow work is, unbecoming everything that you've become. And that is your programs, your belief systems. And it's generally very emotional.
I've never heard that part before, to be honest.
Which part?
I never heard it phrased like that. It's unbecoming everything that you are.
Yeah. Well, that was our first episode.
Was I didn't know in that sentence. I've never heard shadow work phrased as unbecoming. I remember what you were saying last time, but you're talking about awakening.
Yeah, but I mean it's the same thing, because if you think about awakening as that process of shadow work, you become a shadow worker to be transformed into the light worker. But let us not digress. What I was going to say is that if you think about shadow work as not just emotional, yes, okay, everything starts at that emotional point, but I think shadow work there's a whole aspect of shadow work that's in the physical. There really is, because if you think about the fact that if somebody has poor self-image, it's not just a worthiness wound that they need to go and work on emotionally. Yes, that might help. Yes, the integration of the emotional trauma around why am I worthy? Why am I feeling unworthy? Where did it come from? Oh God, it's a childhood wound. Let me go reparent my inner child. Okay, now I feel better. Well, no, because if that shadow wound is integrated into your physicality, then you've got a permanent doorway of reminder to say to you, it's not quite healed yet. And this is what's dropped into my awareness now, is that I love people. Don't get me wrong, I love people that are body confident. I love people that are truly connected to their bodies, and they don't care what they look like, and they don't care how they show up. But I do think that there is a lot of bypassing that happens, especially, I mean, the worthiness wound is a very big one, where people hate their bodies, but they will spiritually bypass it with, I am loved, I am great, and all the affirmations that come with it from the emotional aspect. Oh yes, of course, okay, that worthiness came from my dad being this and that. Okay, now I'm worthy, and now I can have a beautiful relationship with my body, but they haven't done anything in the physical to actually honor the process of healing to support their body. So I would always say to people, it's be very careful with spiritual bypassing, which again is a topic for another day, but look at where, when you are doing shadow work, you need to be doing the physical work as well. You have to be marrying both things together, because even at the very fundamentals of shadow work, what is the first thing we do? We come into presence. How do we come into presence to deal with the stuff on the inside? We breathe. Physical, spiritual. When we are receiving downloads, we are receiving the downloads energetically, but what do we often do with them? We write them out. Physical, spiritual. So there are always these practices that marry both the spiritual and the physical together continually. You know, it's really, really amazing if you think about the fact that we are majority water. Water holds frequency, it holds the greatest memory. We need to be able to drink that water. That's a physical act. So everything with the spiritual marries into the physical, and we need to really understand that. And so if you are dealing with an illness or an injury or whatever, whether that's mental illness, whether that's a physical disease, whatever, understanding the spiritual aspect of why it's there in the first place is going to really help you to understanding how you need to heal. But you also need to start with healing the physical body and understanding. I mean, that is a huge, deep conversation, you know, when you start looking into, you know, gut health and all of that stuff and stem cell regeneration. Yeah. But I think for this conversation, it's just about understanding that there is a marriage between the two that we need to really understand. So when you are coming into shadow work, you know, having a list of physical, spiritual. Okay, so the spiritual wound is worthiness. Where do I not feel worthy about my body? What can I do to support my body in this now moment? I think that's really, really helpful. Exactly. Well, the law of physical reality is action. Yeah. So people often say, like, I don't have motivation. Motivation comes from action, you know? And so if you're waiting to be motivated to take action, you're going to wait forever. You know, you put on a YouTube and feel motivated for a little bit, and then you lose it because you're not connecting with, like, what's really motivating you. You know, the desire to actually be all that you could be, the desire to really be free, the desire to really be loved, to live the life that you want. So yeah, I like what you're saying. Like, you get the download, you write it out. So how can you support yourself physically every day is number one. Yeah. You know, and then how can we integrate spirituality in that supporting of the body is actually number one. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's kind of, to break it down, I think I think the easiest way to do that is to, obviously look at that, like breathing. Okay, breathing goes hand in hand with cultivating presence. So when you are breathing, you are doing both a physical and spiritual acts. So from a spiritual practice, in terms of what I think would be the fundamental basics of what you need to get right, if you're newly awakened, is being with yourself. Number one, I don't even think there are any other things that I would say other than cultivating presence with yourself, getting super comfortable with being in the presence of yourself, because people will say, yeah, I can sit quietly for a moment. And what ends up happening is when people are by themselves or they have too much alone time, all of a sudden they fill that time with distractions, with things they need to do, with things that they're thinking about. People are really, really unable to sit with themselves. They're really, really unable to sit with themselves. And what's really interesting is that what I've noticed recently is that people find it really difficult to sit with the bad parts of themselves.
Of course.
And it's about understanding that that's where the integration happens. That's where the shadow happens, is when we can sit with it and we can look at it. And at the very least, in the very beginning, acknowledge it. That's it. It doesn't even need to go deeper than that. Obviously, spiritual practice does go deeper than that. And you have the inner child healing, you have the alchemy, you have the meditation, you have the activations, you have the connections to source and the downloads and the channeling and all the really fun stuff. But fundamentally, if none of that was accessible, the only thing that would matter is your connection to yourself, because you are the gateway to that connection to the cosmos, because you are it. So breath and meditation and presence with yourself.
Yeah, no, I love that. I've said it to so many people as well. Like, if everyone could just sit alone for 5 minutes by themselves every day, the world would be such a different
100%.
place. Yeah, but and we avoid the nasty bits of ourselves because we were never told that it was okay.
Yeah.
We were always told like, oh, it's, don't get angry or don't cry or whatever the story was. So it's uncomfortable because we've never thought that was okay.
Yeah, I actually think that should be our next episode, is unpacking all of the undesirable emotions that we've been told we can't feel and where they actually come from.
I'd like that. Yeah, I think that's really cool.
So the other thing that I wanted to touch on was, what would you say to people, because this is a question that I get asked a lot, around, I can't meditate, I can't make my brain be quiet.
Don't try. You can't. Trying to stop your brain is like trying to stop the wind, or the weather. I mean, maybe
it's not windy.
Saudi Arabia can do it, cloud seeding. But it's like trying to stop something that you can't stop. You don't try to stop your mind. And that's, again, why I love the body and movement, because something like Qigong, something even like exercise, if you can really focus on your breathing whilst you're exercising, that becomes a meditation. Yeah. So every person has something that they can do: painting, art, dance, movement, going for a walk, swimming, like rock stacking. Like, there's endless things where when you're doing it, you're not really thinking. You're not trying to think like, oh, my taxes or dinner or shopping. So if you're trying to stop your mind and you're struggling, it's because you're going about it the wrong way. You're going about it in an impossible way. Find something that you can enjoy and really bring as much presence into that as you can. So I struggle to stop my mind all the time, but if I really focus on some Qigong and just start moving in even a very repetitive fashion and slowing down my breathing, again, if you focus on your breath, your breath mirrors your mind. So if your breathing is chaotic, your mind is chaotic, and vice versa. So again, focus on your breathing. Do whatever exercise, like going for a walk. Try going for a walk, and every 4 steps you breathe in, and every 6 steps you breathe out. And you start playing little games like that, and very quickly you'll feel a sense of calm, a sense of connection, a sense of presence. And it's quite simple, but because we've overthought it all, and it's like, oh, if I can't control my brain for like 2 seconds, then I've lost the plot or I'm out of control. It's like, slow down, work with somebody who knows what they're talking about, find some videos if you want, if you're that kind of person. But I think a lot of people, they don't actually know how to learn. They don't actually know how to really take in information and decipher it. So if you're a person who's, it's raining a lot, so
it's beautiful.
Yeah, if you're getting overwhelmed a lot of the time, or if you are overwhelmed, trying to take in more information is not going to really help you.
Yeah.
Trying to get away from everything will actually serve you a lot more.
So I think the other thing that I wanted to add in, and this is kind of a lot of what I teach my clients in coaching, is that inherently the ego, which is the mind, cannot simultaneously do too many things at once. So if you are looking for a really easy way to be able to connect into your breath, it's to give your brain a job. So whilst I love the qigong and the movement of energy, a lot of people are not at that level yet. They don't even know how to do that yet. But when you're there, it's beautiful.
There was some videos.
Yeah, exactly. But I think for a very simple entry level way into that, I will say to my clients, literally give your brain the job of saying in and out, in, out. Very rudimentary, but even still to this day, if I'm having a really overwhelmed day and I'm dysregulated, giving my mind the job of in, out, in, out. I'm just keeping that continual story and loop going, stops the mind from being able to bring anything else in. And then you aren't really thinking because there's no story or narrative coming in. It is giving the brain a job of something that is beneficial to you. And then what ends up happening is you are bringing in enough conscious oxygen and consciousness, which is obviously potential, into the body that your body starts to relax. And once you have that beautiful feeling of deep relaxation in the body, then the in and the out just happens organically. So I would honestly say it doesn't even take that long. A lot of people that have never really breathed properly before have been amazed at how quickly they can get into that rhythm of in and out. It's not just for a panic attack. And the other thing that I wanted to say around, and also with this regulation, there's loads of really quick and easy breathwork methods that you can do to alleviate anxiety. There are so many of them. But I'm not going to go into that now. But what I did want to say is when you were talking about motivation and action is that I received a really cool download about how motivation is action without the consciousness. Because if you spell motivation, it has action at the end without the C.
Motivation is action without the consciousness.
Yeah.
I like it.
I thought it was pretty cool.
That's very cool. I love it.
Like, oh, why are you sharing this now?
Yeah. So this is such a beautiful topic, and it's actually like my most favorite thing to explain or talk about is how energy works with the universe, with yourself. So what we're saying before, the word inspiration used to mean breathing in. Inspiration, inhalation, in spirit, breathing in the spirit of life, because the breath is actually what gives you life. When you stop breathing, your spirit leaves your body, you die. So inspired action, connecting with the breath, slowing down, making the decision, then moving. So inspired action will move you a lot more quicker than motivation. And motivation is action without the consciousness, is actually still coming from unconscious beliefs and programming. So you're still further facilitating and creating the same state that you're already in because it's coming from that place of unconsciousness.
Boom.
Boom.
No, that is gold. That is amazing. Yeah, I love how that flowed. Sure.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of our top tips, we've kind of digressed along a couple of tangents, but
not digressed at all.
I mean, it's exactly as it needs to be. But we have breath, we have presence, connecting into presence. We've got breath. We want to start talking about a little bit of nervous system dysregulation, checking in with our bodies. That is an absolute. If you can check in with your body and cultivate that connection to self, that is a really great place to start. So, what would be your number one way of nervous system dysregulation? Regulation.
So I heard something so cool the other day. It said, the opposite of anxiety is not calm, it's trust. So how can you build trust in your body, trust in yourself? Number one would actually be the conversation taking place inside your head. You know, often we don't really realize what we're actually saying to ourselves when these things are happening. I'm so stupid, I can't believe this is happening, I'm terrible, my life sucks. That's going to make you not trust anything. That's going to keep you in dysregulation. So just a simple way to self-soothe, a simple way to start regulating is just how you're talking to yourself. You know, next time you're panicking or stressed or anxious, like what is the conversation happening? And can it be one of like, okay, I don't really like the way I'm feeling, I don't really like what's happening, but I know everything's going to be okay. Let me just try to like calm down, or let me just start to breathe a bit. But yeah, the best way, if you can, is to get out of the situation that you're in. So let's say you're at home and you're stressing over something. Can you go outside and just stand in the sun for 2 minutes? One of my favorite things is to go outside if it's raining now, but if it's sunny and I look at the sun with my eyes closed and I just feel the warmth of the sun on my eyelids, and just take like one breath in that state, you'll just feel so grounded and back to center. So it can often be our internal environment that's dysregulating us, but it can also be the actual environment. You know, if you're on your computer a lot, if you're sitting a lot, when you're on a screen, you don't realize that you don't blink. That's why you get eye strain and pain. And also your eyes are only focused here. So the muscles to pull your eyes in and out of focus are only here. And there's muscles all on the back of your head that help your eyes to focus. So all these muscles aren't even moving, and you're going to get stiff and tired, and people are going to get headaches, and then you got forward head posture because you're trying to get more oxygen into the body. Your head moves forward, not because of gravity, but because if my posture is bad and I try to breathe, it feels very labored. But if my head's here, it's super easy. So it's actually the body's way of trying to get more air. And for every inch the head moves forward, you're cutting off like 10% oxygen to the brain.
Sure.
So getting out of the physical environment, am I sitting, like that's why I love sitting on the floor, because your body will tell you when it needs to move. I mean, I don't know if you notice I move around a lot, because like I'll sit like this, and then after a while my body's like, I start to feel like I'm trapped. Like, okay, this leg comes up. And so get into a different environment, go outside. Nature is the original frequency. Nature is the prime healer. If you're not spending like a few minutes at least in nature every day, you're going to get dysregulated. So change the external environment if possible. Change the internal environment. How are you talking to yourself? How are you breathing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to add on to that, I think one of the greatest nervous system dysregulation regulations, which is going to be my thing now, is obviously grounding, and that is really, really important. And you know, there's a misconception that, you know, I need to now go stand on the grass for 5 minutes and, you know, look around. I mean, that's going to serve you, but there are loads and loads of different methods that you can ground. You can ground by
the grass.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the grass, but there are other methods. So if you live in a high-rise building and you don't have access to a grassy patch, then you're gonna go and stand in a pot plant or whatever. But it's really about understanding that your intention is everything. So you can set your intention to ground your energy. Yes, we kind of take grounding to be literal grounding on a piece of ground. But you can actually just set your intention that in this now moment, I'm going to feel the gravitational pull on my body. I'm going to stand and I'm going to anchor in my energy. If I'm on the top floor of the penthouse, I'm going to visualize that energy going all the way down into the heart center of Mother Earth and being received and then being transmuted and replenished back up into my body. It's not a difficult thing to do. So a lot of people say, no, but I can't ground. I don't have this, I don't have that. That's one of the most easiest ways that you can ground. And it brings the gravitational pull in your energy field, which anchors you back into your reality. Because a lot of the time when you're in nervous system dysregulation, you are in hyper alertness and you're actually not in your body. You're trying to escape your body. You are not in your body. So grounding is a great way to bring you back into the body in a safe way that you can get back into that space of trust where you go, okay, it's going to be okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to say about nervous system dysregulation is quite controversial, but it does work, is that very often if someone is having a panic attack or they are really dysregulated, in a very gentle, mindful way, this doesn't really necessarily work for yourself because you do need someone to kind of implement this for you. But if you have a really amazing partner or you have a friend that you can say, listen, I'm prone to anxiety attacks, you know this about me. When that happens, I need you to please, blah, blah, blah. And the process is to get people to focus on gratitude. It is the easiest, fastest way to move people into higher levels of consciousness because number one, you're giving the brain the job of thinking about what is it that I'm grateful for in this now moment. And a lot of the time and I see this with my kids, a lot of the time you'll be like, what are you grateful for? And they're like, I hate life. Everything is terrible. There's nothing to be grateful for. Okay, well, are you happy that I'm here with you right now, making sure that you're okay? Yeah, I guess so. Okay. All right, in this now moment, is it nice to have my arms around you? Do you feel grateful for this hug? Yeah, it feels amazing. I'm grateful for you, Mom. So in those moments when you are able to get someone to cultivate gratitude, and you can do it for yourself. I mean, that's what I do. If I'm really spinning out and I'm having a really shocking day, the easiest thing for me to do is to find gratitude. Oh my gosh, I'm grateful that I have the eyes that can see the wall that is right in front of me right now. I'm grateful that I can actually feel my hands and feel my body. I'm grateful for the breath that is actually sustaining my body right now. It doesn't matter about the noise. You can feel super shitty. You can feel really overwhelmed. You can feel like you want to die. But in the moment, it's about coming into, okay, there are actually things, tangible things that I can come back into gratitude for, which is going to start to anchor in that higher consciousness frequency into the body and bring you out of that space of dysregulation. And I've found it only needs 2 or 3 genuine, authentic things that you're grateful for you to be able to shift out of that space. So that would be my kind of spiritual,
I love it.
Nervous system regulation tip.
Every time something changes in the body, there is a story. So thoughts are the language of the mind, emotions are the language of the body. You can never have an emotion without a story. And I remember when I first started to learn this, and I would sit in meditation whilst an intense emotion is coming over, and I would like really actually detach from the story, instantly a new one would come. And that showed me like whatever it is your mind is telling you when you're feeling emotional is usually wrong. What you're feeling is right, but what you're thinking is wrong. So when you're having dysregulation, recognize that the story that's playing in your head is probably not true. It's like 99% probably. Like even if what's happening is true, the story is making it worse.
Yeah.
So again, focusing on gratitude is shifting the story. And as you shift this story, this vessel will follow suit. So this is like the storyteller, this is like the book. So the book will follow suit, you know, the chapter will, I don't even know the analogy that I'm trying to use, yeah. But you get what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And I think that's super important, because even in the alchemy work that I teach, it's never about the story. We never even, yes, we identify originally the story. Okay, so the worthiness wound came from that story around something that tangibly happened. It's not even a story, it's real, it's reality. And then we bring it into the body as a feeling. We don't even look at the story after that point.
Yeah.
And it's so important that people start to recognize the moment that you're trying to do any work in the mind to heal, it's the wrong place to be.
I like that. That's beautiful. Don't start in the mind, because the mind is tricky and trickster. And the mind makes for a beautiful servant, but a terrible master. Don't let it control you. So start in the body, which is more tangible. So the physicality, how can you breathe differently? How can you focus on gratitude? How can you move? How can you get outside into nature? How can you stay hydrated? Something as simple as like, okay, let me just go pour a glass of water, say thank you to the water, have some gratitude, drink that glass as slowly as you can, following your breathing. Just little things to shift you back into whatever you need to.
Yeah.
And the littlest shift can actually have the biggest effect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is in the simplicity.
Beautiful. I love it.
It's awesome.
Thank you, Candace.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Big love.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Big love to you as well. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Peace and love.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us. If you enjoyed the episode, let us know. Leave a comment, leave a like. If there are particular questions you'd like us to answer or to tackle, drop a message to us, get in contact, and we'll see you in the next episode. Big love.